Hello, everybody. My name is Brenton O'Callaghan, and I'm the Chief Customer Officer here at Avantra.
And I'm Tyler Constable, Head of Solutions Engineering here at Avantra.
Today, we are here to talk to you about Rise with SAP. And from an SAP operations standpoint, where do you retain responsibility and what do you need to pay attention to as you think about the journey, as you're on the journey, and as you're moving to that end state? Is that fair to say, Tyler?
I think that's a great discussion. Yeah, let's get into it.
Awesome. So let's start with the obvious one, the question everyone's been asking for 2 years. Everybody kind of knows the answer. What is Rise with SAP from your perspective, Tyler?
Yeah, so this is SAP's response to needing to be more of a cloud-based company, right? So they're trying to figure out a way where there's something that's heavily on-premise, and they're trying to find a way, how do we become more of a cloud-based company? And they have to do it in a way where there's still flexibility, right? The customers still have some flexibility in what they do. And really the best way to kind of break it down is really to talk about the different editions there are of Rise SAP. So there's two types. There's the public cloud and the private cloud edition Rise with SAP. And this really kind of helps determine what kind of flexibility you're going to have. So the public cloud edition is really around more of a traditional, I guess what you would think of a SaaS-based solution. So these are the things like, when you think of like Ariba or SuccessFactors, where there's not much structural changes you can do. You're kind of just putting data in, right? And it's a shared model, right? So there's multiple organizations.
You're configuring it to match your business requirements, but you're not getting under the hood and changing things and saying, I don't like that button, I want to move this over here or whatever. It's just configuration, right?
Exactly. Yep. Just a place to put your data. Where private cloud edition is really more what we're seeing a lot more in the industry. And this is where you have your own dedicated environment. You are a single tenant in your own network, and you can make some more structural changes as well. And again, that's really kind of where most people are going when we talk about Rise with SAP in a private cloud edition.
That makes sense. So to put it in absolute kind of easy to understand language, when we're talking public cloud, you're talking SaaS, you're talking about solutions like PagerDuty, like Expensify, like Xero, the stuff that we hear about all the time. You're just using it through the website. Private cloud edition, we're talking about it is your system dedicated to you, and you can do some customizations and changes to that system to match your business, right?
That's exactly it.
Can't you have private cloud edition in the public cloud?
Isn't that the most confusing thing ever?
Just a little bit.
Yeah, so this is a great point. So we hear the word public cloud, right? And traditionally what that meant are I guess we call the infrastructure as a service or the hyperscaler. So these are the AWS of the world, the Azures, the Google Clouds, the Alibabas, right? Now, SAP comes along and says, well, hey, we're going to call this thing public cloud edition for Rise with SAP. That doesn't mean that at all, right? So when we talk about the private cloud, yes, it's still going to be running on a public cloud hyperscaler IaaS infrastructure as a service. So when you choose to go to private cloud edition on Rise with SAP, you're going to be able to do some selections around what hyperscaler, what zones, and all that architectural stuff. So you still get to make that selection. So yes, the private cloud edition is still going to be on a traditional public cloud hyperscaler. Even I'm getting tripped up in all this.
Well, hopefully, the way I always think about this as well is, if you're a small business, even if you're up to kind of a medium-sized business, you're probably looking at the public cloud. If you're medium or larger, chances are you're a private cloud implementation, i.e. it's customized, it's dedicated to you, but you're in the public cloud or you're on premise. Is that fair?
I think you're exactly correct in that that breakdown there.
So when we're talking about Rise, at least in this context, we're going to be talking about the private cloud edition in the public cloud. So let's talk about it. What does Rise mean in that setting?
Yeah. So, I always like there's an analogy here that I always like to use, and this is that of an apartment building. And I think this is kind of helps us decide or to differentiate where does SAP go and what they support and what are you still responsible for? Because this is still something that's a little tricky to understand in a Rise with SAP environment. So this apartment analogy is, you have your brick and mortar building, right? And that's kind of the infrastructure as a service. These are the things that SAP is going to be doing. So there's some software that comes, additional software that comes with your contract and all that stuff. But when you go inside the building, you kind of go into the lower level or the basement, and there's typically some rooms down there that are meant for heating and plumbing, right? So those kind of heat those apartments up on the upper levels. And that is what we call in an SAP environment, the client 000 or 000, right? So think of on the door there is number 000. That's what that building does, or that's what that room does. And that's kind of what SAP is responsible for. They're responsible for the brick and mortar and up into that basement level heating and cooling apartment. When you go into the actual apartments though, right? So let's say you go up into the first level and you walk into apartment 100, right? So that's the first level building. Now in that apartment, you, the customer, can do whatever you want. You can put a wall over here, you can put a wall over there, you can paint it whatever colors you want, you can put out whatever appliances you want. That is exactly what we see in this line here, or this picture here, is that dotted line across is kind of that differentiator where SAP is responsible for everything up into client 000, that basement level client that feeds into the other apartments, and you still are responsible for everything from within your own apartment. So
and typically you'd have multiple apartments in your apartment building. You might have 3 or 4 clients configured in your SAP system, all benefiting from the client 000 or the basement foundation, plumbing, heating, water, light, all that kind of stuff, all coming in as utilities to make sure the other clients can function.
Exactly. And what's kind of represented kind of poorly on this chart is the fact that SAP part is pretty big in that arrow to show us, but really you have a lot of responsibility still within that apartment, right? So these are all the different things that you're still responsible for within that client. So we don't need to read through all of these, but really there's a lot of technical based checks that need to take place, and there's a lot of business type checks that need to go in place as well. So around are the batch jobs running, are IDOCs passing through, all that stuff.
Yes,
that's still on you. That is not something SAP is going to be responsible for.
Absolutely. And I mean, even if you take your business processes, SAP aren't going to get involved in your business processes. If you have to hand off from your system to a third-party SaaS solution, that's on you to configure and to make sure that the messages get out. It is completely on you to make sure that the configuration and the setup of your system match those processes that allow your business to function. That's on you, right? Or your MSP.
Right. And Brenton, I'm going to make things even more complicated here. So
great.
SAP also, so in your Rise with SAP contract, you kind of have a base level of things that SAP is going to be responsible for. But you do have the option to select additional packages and additional services from SAP. So there are these things called CAS packages or just additional services where you can then contract with SAP to take some of that responsibility, right? And there's different packages and different levels. So you might come in with a base level package where then you and your team are still responsible, or a managed service provider is still responsible for all these things, or SAP can take some of these on as well. And it depends what is important to you and what you want to contract with SAP or you want to do yourself.
That makes sense. So let's bring this back to SAP operations professionals and kind of how you should approach this. So we know we've a lot of responsibility. We're not absolving ourselves of making sure that the business is able to run. How does Avantra play in this space? What are the benefits of looking at an Avantra system in the world of Rise with SAP?
Yeah, so no matter what, you're still going to have a lot of responsibilities on your hands in a Rise with SAP environment. And there are things that you might not initially think of that you're going to want to do, to follow your guidelines that you use for your organization. Things like getting data into your ticketing or incident management solutions. So things like ServiceNow, you might use PagerDuty, Slack. Really, and this is where Avantra can come in and be that middleman between Rise with SAP and your backend solutions. And that could be anything, any API call that you can absorb. Your ticketing solution doesn't have to be the ones that we have shown on the screen here. Avantra can take the information out of the Rise with SAP environment and pass it along into your backend ticketing and incident management solutions. Let's be honest. In a Rise with SAP environment, you're still going to be hybrid, right? There's still going to be legacy-based things back in your environment. Custom things, standalone databases, interfaces, all that stuff, right? So the next thing about Avantra is, from a single source solution, you can actually have your Rise with SAP data coming in from a health perspective and all that. You can go into public cloud things that you might have. Maybe you're using Salesforce, or you're using Ariba, SuccessFactors, whatever. You still have an on-premise database or legacy ERP system still on-prem, right?
Right.
Which can watch all of that as well and put it in a nice dashboards, have some nice reporting capabilities for you as well.
Actually, that reminds me. I was speaking to one of our automotive customers, who are on this journey in the Rise world, and he said to me, he said, just remember, we're not wall to wall SAP for our manufacturing process. There are label printers, there are manufacturing third party systems, and of course the SAP systems, all of which hang together to make up their ability to actually do their manufacturing. And so it's not just SAP, it's also the non SAP stuff and making sure you've that full view across all of it, right?
Exactly. Yep, that's a good point. And even within that, there's going to be automations for all of that stuff as well, including
Mm-hmm.
things in Rise with SAP. So there, Avantra can actually, tie into SAP in your Rise with SAP environment, run some automations from that perspective. This can be things like end user management, batch job management, things of that nature. We've got a great breakdown here where you can actually see on the far right is all of our Rise with SAP automations that are available. So what we're looking at
Yep.
here are the different editions of Avantra. The far right is our cloud edition for Rise. So these are some of the things you can do here. Things around, again, client administration. You can do things around S-Trust, so ABAP certificates, which is a really, really important topic. User
Of
maintenance,
course.
change options. So yeah, quite a lot still responsible for that Avantra can help with.
Cool.
And let's not forget the audit-based activities as well. Everyone's going to get audited at least once a year.
Yep.
Making sure that the clients are locked down, make sure that there's no new database users that shouldn't be there. All that stuff Avantra can be checking as well.
Fantastic. And by the way, the one that's near and dear to my heart is the one you were talking about there with the automations. There's stuff out of the box that works with Rise, but you also get the ability to build your own automations as well. You still get that low code access into your SAP system to automate whatever you want. I mean, we've some customers building automations and then exposing them as ServiceNow catalog items for self-service activities within the help desk or within customers. I mean, really, the possibilities remain endless in that area.
Yeah, I'd have to agree. That's the great thing about Avantra is we are a platform where, yes, we have pre-built automations ready to go for you, but you can also build out your own automations to do pretty much whatever it is that you want. We are a full platform specifically designed for SAP environments and Rise with SAP environments.
So, Tyler, the last thing I want to talk about is the journey, because what's that famous quote? There is no destination, only continuous journeys. But you have folks at different points. You have folks that are considering Rise, you have folks that have agreed to do Rise, haven't started yet, and you have folks on the way, or maybe you're already even in Rise. How does all of this help with that journey?
Yeah, so if you're just even considering Rise, right, you haven't really started that journey yet. It's good to get some kind of ideas to how your system is behaving right now, right? Certain transactions, whatever that is, right? So you want to have an idea as to what's going on. You also need to start looking at, okay, are we already on S4 or is this going to be an S4 transformation as part of this Rise journey? It's going to be a big topic. If it's a full transformation, this is probably going to be a multi-year project. If not, it's still going to be a lengthy project, but a little bit easier, more of a technical migration, I guess. So it's good to have some eyes on the system before that migration itself. During that transition, it's not going to be an overnight thing. It's going to be quite yeah. So having some kind of ideas on being able to stand up training systems quickly, being able to keep an eye on how that system is behaving as you migrate, all of that stuff is really, really important. And then, of course, afterwards, like any SAP major project, you're going to want to have kind of a, for lack of a better word, a war room type situation where you can keep an eye on the health of the system that first time the business hits it, that first day. That's all really important stuff. So having that visibility into the health is really, really important. So as you begin your journey, it's important to have those eyes on the system throughout that whole process.
Yeah, because I mean, especially when you're going through whether it's be an S4 transformation or you're already on S4 and you're going to Rise, you want to make sure you're giving the system back to the business in at least as good a state as they had it before, if not better. I mean, obviously we're all aiming for better, but sometimes it's just a technical translation or whatever the case may be. And you need to be confident you're giving it back in that same state and being able to monitor not just the system, but also all of its integrations, how the data is flowing through the system, and whether your business processes are working the way they should be. I mean, that's critical.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. And the important thing too to remember is, SAP does a great job, with Rise with SAP environments. But there's always kind of a little bit of power in being able to have that transparency directly to you as well, not just relying
Absolutely.
on a third party to say this is how your system is behaving, and then the business is telling you something completely different. So this is where Avantra can also come in and kind of give you visibility, so you can actually have that power to actually see what's happening in that environment.
Fantastic. Well, thank you so much for joining us, everybody, and thank you, Tyler, for speaking to me today on this one. I hope that was useful. If you want to learn more, please go to avantra.com, check out our YouTube channel, or find us on LinkedIn. Myself and Tyler are on there. And if you have questions, just let us know. Thanks very much for joining us.